Thank you very much, Dr. Salah. Now we will have on the floor our third speaker, Dr. Sarah El-Battouty. She will talk about the Race to Zero campaign under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Dr. Sarah El-Battouty, she is an architect and climate policy specialist with 20 years of experience in sustainable design and development field. She is a senior advisor of the Egyptian president from 2014 till the present. She is a United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC Global Ambassador with a high-level champion. She founded Egypt's leading green building consultancy, the Eco Consult, in 2013, and she is also the founder for a scrap waste upcycling company, Mobon, and she is an Ashadan Cooling Fellow. Sarah is a recipient of the Vital Voices awarded for Greater MENA 2020 and the first leader in the region to be among the impact entrepreneurs by Forbes. Please welcome with me Sarah on the floor. Sure. I can change with the pepper? Yeah, you will have this. Or this one. Okay, and you have 15 minutes to be on the screen. Okay. اللي هي اللي فوق دي في النص دي تروحي يعني forward and backward باللي تحتها. Thank you. Okay.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. I am very excited about this conference, really. I do want to talk today about what Her Excellency Minister Razan touched on. And it's just to give you an idea of what the Race to Zero and what our role as global ambassadors with the UNFCCC, what we're aiming to do, and how we can bring this global initiative closer to home, closer to the region, and definitely closer to Egypt. So Dr. Mahmoud Mohyiddin is the current champion for COP27, and he is assisting the new COP champion, Her Excellency Minister Razan, on this. The high-level champions team is basically a difference in the way we promote climate action. So for the longest time, you had governments, banks, very large multinationals discussing what all of us should be doing on the ground. And there was very little inclusion with the people that actually put these policies on the ground. So the idea was, how do we get more and more communities to join in? They started engaging with NGOs, with private sector, with local government at the municipal level, and definitely with just influential personalities and activists, etc. So the global ambassadors, as you can see, are a culmination of different people taking climate action to all various different levels. And this has helped make this message less theoretical. For the longest time, we've been talking about the theory behind climate change, trying to convince that the science behind it is coming to the forefront, engaging with people who are denying climate change. I mean, there's been a lot of paperwork and very little, showcasing on the ground to show for it and how to bring the language closer. So that's our job. Our job is that everyone in their own space and their own expertise is making this a little bit easier. And because of that, we work with government. So it's, working on different scales. Previously, Dr. Salah and the speakers and Minister Yasmin, they spoke about the case of what our industry is doing. Obviously, we are the second highest emitters. It's a very sophisticated sector. It's very broad, it includes lots of people, and it includes lots of pushback as well. And we really have to be realistic to this. For a long time, every time you say the word green buildings, and I'm a practitioner in green buildings, somebody says it's more expensive, nobody wants it, why should I do this, why should I do that? It's inapplicable, or that the technology that is being invested in green buildings is completely alien to what we need in our part of the world. So when we used to have goals like this, of reaching, net zero, reducing by 40%, it was very scary for it to be adopted. This is why we want to bring it closer and closer to reality. How can we bring net zero to our sector? The first thing that we have to look for is, what do we want out of our buildings? And I think, as an architect, the principal brief that we are getting is to make the users of our building comfortable. And historically, we're losing touch out of this. So we need to rethink how we build the buildings that we do. One of the main stresses on humanity at the moment is heat stress in our part of the world, energy bills, utility bills, the performance of the building, and the discomfort and the lack of occupancy retention in buildings. So we really need to address this from the onset. So we need to look at the energy, what the building is doing for climate protection, look at just an equitable action as well. This is a point that is a main focus in my work, and I am championing this with the high-level champions. I don't think green buildings should just be for rich people, and I don't think green buildings should just be for governments that have a lot of money. I think green buildings should protect everyone from climate stress, and therefore we have to have affordable and accessible projects on the ground. The key to the transformation step, it's a lot of slide with a lot of writing, but basically what we need to do is to push the case forward that we need green buildings, and I think we're well on the way past that. COP27 had a huge role in really spotlighting the built environment. COP28 is taking on from that role and developing it. You need to talk about costs and the economics of green buildings. One of the major risks with new developments, new construction projects, new cities, etc., is that they will become commercially unviable in a few years if they do not address climate resilience. It's going to be a very difficult asset. They're going to be stranded assets. More and more projects are going to be erected around the world, and they will be responding to climate change. They will be green projects, net zero projects. Automatically, when you have a new market like this developing, it makes you look at the conventional buildings there. And therefore, they will be stranded. They will not be performing as well as these new, intelligent, smart green buildings. So we have to look at forecasting the risks of conventionally building as we are at the moment and not looking at the way forward. One of the most important features is to really promote radical partnerships. And this is one of the most difficult aspects with the SDGs. It's that last one, 17, the partnerships, to work with government, to work with technology, to work with banks and financial systems, and to also work with the experts. How can you promote getting everyone on board to change this sector? So this is the main key steps that we really want to address. That's a lot of stuff in a slide, but basically this is all of the stuff that's going on behind with the UN high-level champions. They're looking at the finances, the people, the loss and damage. It's a complicated framework, but in it is all the discussions that we had in Sharm el-Sheikh to promote looking at loss and damage and the built environment as well. An interesting feature is that with respect to this sector, this is exactly what we have. We have the World Green Building Council, the local green building councils. We have people from private sector. We have people from sustainability chiefs. And we have SMEs. All of these people are working to transform the sector. This is one of the leading sectors where the different voices are coming about successfully. If you look at the other sectors like agriculture or oil and gas, or you have the champions. You have the big heavyweights. They come in and they talk and they transition. But the building sector is very interesting because it's so broad and because it has contractors and it has materials and heavy industries and it has architects, it's engaging all of them at the same time. This is the kind of radical thinking that we want to introduce to all climate policy being done. Race to Zero, which is, it's a toolkit, it's a community. Around the world, the idea of Race to Zero is to introduce non-state actors, as I mentioned, to all come in and work on the sector. How do you do that? You create a framework. So far, there are 11,000 members in Race to Zero. There's a growing part in the design, build, and heavy industry that are coming in eventually. So Race to Zero is a community. This community is international. They're all in conversation with each other. We get this kind of exposure. Race to Resilience is different. Race to Resilience is basically trying to, this explains it very well, but it's in pursuit for us not to just survive climate change, but to actually develop and thrive. Because so far, the benchmark is set very low. The cost of disasters and climate disasters is crippling to governments. It's pushing back on financing. The risks are very high. We don't want to stay in that low benchmark for a long time. We want to actually be able to be resilient and thrive within it. These are the 5 Ps that involve the Race to Zero. You pledge. Basically, you start thinking about how your company or how your NGO works or how your government institute starts working. You pledge. You start thinking, how do I take steps to reducing my carbon emissions? You plan and you publicly announce that plan. And it's that kind of transparency that we really need. What am I set to do? Even if the goals are very small, there is no limit as to who joins the Race to Zero in terms of your performance. And then you proceed, you publish that plan, and you persuade. So I'm now trying to persuade. This is very important. When it comes to the sector of what we're discussing today, the sector is quite slow to join, but however, there is movement in there. You can see many companies that are architecture firms, that are design and build, construction, everything. Here, I'm very proud. We have 2 Egyptian companies. One is myself, I'm part of it. There's another Egyptian NGO, and there's another Middle Eastern NGO. But really, quite frankly, and I say this with a lot of hope that there will be action, for the Middle East and North Africa to host 3 COPs, Morocco, Egypt, and the UAE, there should be more local companies on this. Because we're working hard, because we're investing hard, because COP27 has really paved the way for some breakthroughs that COP28 will challenge. We want to urge more of the community to be represented. And the reason why I want to showcase some of the projects that got us there in the first place. This is the journey that a small company can take. I mean, we started with our first carbon neutral project, and the first project started with a building made out of discarded refrigerator casings. It was a cafeteria. Who uses discarded refrigerator casings for a building? But that's the material we decided to use. And this building was certified, but we couldn't execute it in Egypt. There was no need for it. We had to do it in Italy. The next project, you grow with a larger community. And this is a Tarshid triple certified building in partnership with Dr. Salah, who had an incremental role in the design of this in Wahat al-Bahariya. So it's a village for 120 people, private sector. The next project we're working on, again, is a Tarshid community, inshallah, Tarshid Net Zero building. The case is, it's growing. And it's being localized. There is a reason why these projects look like this, because we're localizing the material, we're using nature-based solution, we're using local expertise, local building rating systems, we're using renewable energy, and therefore the myth that all of this is far more expensive than conventional is being shattered. But I can't sit and say it in a lecture, I have to show it on the ground. And we want to encourage the community to start doing this. We want to encourage the Egyptian government to start taking on board. We're working with Minister Hisham, with Dr. Yasmin. We're working with all of the ministers in order to get more and more projects on the ground that look similar to this, look like us, because it's our tech, it's our innovation, it's our project, and it's our contribution to climate action. The breakthroughs, just touching on them, this year COP28 is building on the building breakthroughs. There should be some real innovation that is going to be shared. The World Green Building Council has a larger role in representing net zero, the case for building, and new cities. We are talking about existing cities and new cities and the transition. We're looking for the financing. The financing is where we really need to focus. The financial sector for the longest time has been looking into energy transition, has been looking into innovation in agtech, innovation in in industry, but it doesn't really consider the building sector from the onset. So we need to unlock financial mechanisms for not just the contractors, not just the developers. We need to unlock this for architects. We need to rethink how we're doing the building so that they can be net zero from the conceptualization of the project and not to the end. And this all came about from COP27, leading the way. So I think we're well on the way to showcasing more and more case studies on this at different scales, from the government working on new cities and villages until individual projects. So I hope you do look into the Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and address me. Thank you.